Hey everyone, Josevich here. Welcome to part 3 of my Journey to Ungoro card reveal and card review. Not really a reveal, more of a review. And we're going to get started right away with the new Paladin quest, the last Kaleidoscope, where we are going to be required to cast 6 spells on our minions. And I don't really like this quest so much right now. I don't think there's a whole ton of great Paladin buff cards. Well, I guess there are some buff cards, but not really spells on minions, because this doesn't really seem to include the buffs right now. So I'm not really liking this. I'm not really sure how you're going to be able to build a deck. There is going to be one card later on, I think, that has moderate power, but I feel like a lot of the Paladin buff cards are kind of very high in mana cost, so Paladin's going to have to build a really control-oriented deck in order to be able to play these cards while still throwing this quest out at the beginning of the game. And that's not really where Paladin is right now, so I'm kind of worried about Paladin actually being able to achieve this quest and keep up with all the other classes that seem to have really, really fun, interesting quests right now. And our reward, however, I really do like being Galvadon. And Galvadon is a 5 mana, no surprise there. They always are for the quests. A 5 mana 5/5 beast for Paladin. I don't recognize this guy from Ungoro, but that's okay. And he gets to adapt 5 times, which could be potentially crazy. Now, we're still not sure if this is going to mean 5 unique adapts or 5 1 out of 9s. Because remember, adapt, there's 1 out of 9 or 3 out of 9 choices. And the issue is if you aren't allowed to get duplicates, you will very consistently be able to get something like Wind Fury, Stealth, Divine Shield, things like that, and then the +3 attack, and then whatever else you want. So you'll be able to build a massive Stealth Galvadon with Wind Fury, who's going to be able to almost take someone down from 30 health the next turn. So that's not really going to be necessarily, I don't know if, I mean, it is fair that these quest rewards are super powerful. Or you can build a massive taunt with Divine Shield and can't be targeted by spells. So there's lots of great options that you can have with Galvadon. I like that it's a really powerful reward for a quest that I'm not really excited about. So I'm very neutral on it. I just don't see the quest being achieved and completed in an efficient way for Paladin right now. I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope this ends up working, but we shall see. We shall really see with this card. I'm not sold on it right now on this quest at all. Moving right along to our elementals, this is basically a neutral elemental Firelands portal. It is a 7 mana 6/6. Now, if you played an elemental last turn, and remember, that is seeming to be the new mechanic. If you did something last turn, you can do something next turn, so it allows your opponent and you to play around things that have been happening. So if you know your opponent played an elemental next turn going into turn 7, you know they might be able to do a Blaze Caller. And Blaze Caller has a battle cry of deal 5 damage. And it's also a 6/6 elemental, so it's basically a consistent Firelands portal for 7 mana, same amount of mana as Firelands portal, same damage, and then a consistent 6/6 body. So I think that's actually very reasonable, and in elemental decks, I think this could be one of the higher end cards that gets thrown in there, and in duplicate, it's epic. I think this card really has some, if the elemental decks come to play, I think this is going to be a good late game minion for the elemental decks. Cornered Sentry, 2 mana 2/6, rare for warrior. Now with this battle cry, summoning 3 1/1 raptors for your opponent. So when you add up the math of those 3 1/1s just attack in, this becomes a 2/3 taunt. But this is very interesting because what you have here is a very similar mechanic to that of Leroy Jenkins, where Leroy has a 2/6 charge, or 6/2 charge, but then summons the 2 1/1s which trade off Leroy, which keeps with Leroy's lore. But this is very interesting because it gives warrior, again, they're pushing the taunt idea. And then if warrior is able to have something like a cheap whirlwind or something to remove those raptors, well then you're kind of in business because you have a 2/6 taunt on board, much like Dirty Rat, which is very powerful for that mana cost and that amount of taunt. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens with this card. If Taunt Warrior is going to be a thing, then they'll probably run some of these AoEs to try and have Cornered Sentry become a thing. Kind of interesting. I don't know that we've really seen Taunt Warrior ever really used except for fun. So I'm not really sure where this card is actually going to fit in. But it's interesting none the least. Corrupting Mist, 2 mana rare for Warlock. Corrupt every minion. Destroy them at the start of your next turn. There's already a Corrupt or Corruption for 1 mana, where you can target 1 enemy minion. I don't know if this is enough to slow down early aggro. Maybe it is enough to slow down the aggro decks, but the issue is it's Corrupt every current minion, right? So your opponent could then still just go face and play something new, and then you're going to lose whatever minions you may have already had. So it's kind of not... I don't know that this is really strong enough to have much of an impact on the meta. I think it's interesting. I think it'll be I'm very interested to see what people can really do with this. maybe this does become a better late game card where you have some sort of stabilization, you play Corrupting Mist, then you play Taunts or something like that, so your opponent's forced to basically lose their cards and you hope to not take too much damage. I think that could be an interesting way that this card works. But other than that, maybe actually that's exactly the way that this card would work. This card is, I think it's either early game, you probably, if it's aggro, you're still taking too much face damage for it to be super effective. Whereas if you draw it in the mid game or late game, you play it and then can throw down your taunts to help stop your opponent. So maybe this card has a little bit of viability. I've talked myself into it. I don't like it, but it's a good middle of the pack. It could surprise me. Let's just say I think this card could surprise me. 3/3 Priest Epic. Battle card. Look at 3 cards. Guess which one started in your opponent's deck and you get a copy of it. This is kind of a thought steal mechanic. Kind of. The issue is, in the early game, this is going to be a 33% chance guessing game. You look at 3 cards from your opponent's deck and you guess which one started in their deck, as opposed to in their hand. Or potentially they could just throw us completely random cards. So if you know your opponent's playing an elemental deck and you see a bunch of Jades, guess what? They probably don't have those Jades in there. Or vice versa. If you know they're playing a Jade deck and they show you a bunch of elementals, you probably don't pick that one. This has potential to be okay. 3/3 on 3 mana isn't the best stat line, but depending how this mechanic works, it could be interesting. I'm not sure it works. We're going to see another Priest card in a couple minutes here that I think is probably going to fit in a little bit better with what Priest is probably going to be trying to do. Although this is an interesting card, I don't know how... It'll be interesting and very fun, and if I open it, I'll use it, but unless someone shows how powerful this really is, or until we really see this mechanic fully flushed out, I'm not sold on it right now. This is Evolving Spores. I don't really understand this. Adapt your minions. Adapt, is often cost at 0 mana, sometimes 1. So if you need to hit this on 4 minions, I don't see how for 4 mana this is going to be viable. I'm really confused about this card. If you understand it, let me know. Point me in the right direction. What I'm missing here. I don't like. Maybe, I download the pictures from the Blizzard press kit, so I don't understand why this card seems to be floating in the nether by itself. I don't see this being viable unless you're running some sort of massive stealth rogue where you can just pile a whole bunch of stealth minions on board and you guarantee that they all get some sort of adapt. Otherwise, I'm not sold on this card. I don't understand what's going on with it. So we're just going to move on. A 1 mana 2/1 neutral elemental, freeze an enemy. We haven't seen a lot of the freeze mechanic going on recently, ever since basically early in vanilla, where we had Frost Elemental freezing things in the late game. And this is another early game elemental activator. But because we did see in our last video, part 2 of our Ungoro card reviews, we did see a 1/2 battle cry, add a 1/2 elemental to your hand. I think that kind of helps smooth out your elemental curve more than this. But maybe Blizzard is trying to slowly bring the freeze mechanic back in. They're going to try with a 2/1. Maybe we'll see how the freeze mechanic works out, but right now, especially because this has a 1 health stat line, it's not really that powerful, so this card probably won't see some play, but maybe Blizzard is trying to bring the freeze thing back into the World of Hearthstone, so that could be interesting. But otherwise, I think this is a filler elemental that probably doesn't see play. Gluttonous Ooze, on the other hand, is something that I definitely could see doing some work against some of the aggro pirates. Gluttonous Ooze, destroy your opponent's weapon and gain armor equal to its attack. So if your opponent has an early Fiery War Axe that they upgraded, you destroy it and then gain back whatever armor they just did to face. Or if they have a Arcanite Reaper that they've done 5 to face or 6 to face and then upgraded, guess what? You can destroy that as well and gain that armor right back. So this is a really, really interesting mechanic. I think it's going to be very powerful. There's going to be this interesting cat and mouse game of how many people have to run Gluttonous Ooze so that less people run these aggro decks. At which point Gluttonous Ooze 3 mana 3/3 is not really strong enough, and other decks will be able to then beat Gluttonous Ooze, which will then force them to switch back to aggro, which will beat these other decks that are beating the Gluttonous Ooze. It's going to be this. I'll draw maybe I'll draw a triangle one day to point this out. It's kind of a circle of these decks that are all beating each other, and Gluttonous Ooze is a very interesting mechanic now thrown into the cog of this wheel, which could help to reduce the aggro, which I've been playing a whole bunch of Control Shaman. If you watch my other videos, I really, really enjoy beating aggro, so this is a card I'm really, really hoping I open kind of early in Ungoro and can throw in my decks and sprinkle in there, because especially in Control Shaman, because Control Shaman is going to be losing a bunch of stuff. But that's another video. We'll talk about that later. But I really like Gluttonous Ooze. I think definitely going to be a one of. The 3/3 stats, if you hit a weapon, absolutely not important because you're getting that armor back. And it's neutral, so everyone gains armor, so that's very, very cool. Hemet Jungle Hunter. So Hemet in WoW has always been the staple of every expansion. Hemet's there, always hunting something. And now this is a very, very interesting control style Hemet. The first one, Destroy a Beast, saw 0 play and almost 100% disenchant rate, but that's okay. Battlecry, destroy all cards in your deck that cost 3 or less. So this can kind of say, you can run early game cards purely for their early game value, and once you get Hemet out, they're gone and you don't have to worry about top decking them anymore, which is a very interesting mechanic. However, something like Druid with Innervate and Wild Growth, which are still good in the late game, which is why those cards are so powerful and always around, because they're so powerful, even if you get them in the late game, they're still going to help you. You don't want Hemet, this Hemet at least, in that, well, you don't want either Hemet in that sort of deck. You don't want this Hemet in any sort of real mid-range deck. I mean, I guess there aren't that many Jades that are coming out at one. I mean, you can't play this in the Jade Druid, obviously. Destroy all of your infinite Jades that you want to be piling into your deck. So this is a very, very interesting card. It'll be really, I'm really excited to see what people are going to be able to do with this. You just have enough early game to get to the point that you can get Hemet out, and then you are only top decking really heavy, strong, powerful late game cards that you have the mana then to play. So this is very, very cool. I'm very excited for this. I like the idea of it. I'm not going to rush out. Off the top of my head, I don't have any great ideas of how this is going to be consistent or what I would want to put at mana cost 0 to 3 that I would then want removed. But it's a very, very interesting idea. And it does say from deck, not hand, so there's that little bit of interaction, but that's obviously going to be inconsistent. And maybe this card will be inconsistent as well, because you're going to have to then expect that for parts of the game, you're not going to have all of your deck. So maybe inconsistent, but very interesting at the least. Warrior Legendary, King Mosh. Again, I don't recognize this guy from Mongoro, but that's totally okay. I don't have to. Battlecry, destroy all damaged minions. Warrior, we know, destroys damaged minions. They always have. They've always had different sort of interactions with damaged minions. It's cool. It's really, really slow. It's 9 mana. I don't know what else there is to say about this. I'm not going to get too excited. I'm not excited about this card. I can't see this being super powerful, super meta defining. It'll be cool to see if it works, but I'm not excited about this card off the top of my head here. So we're just moving on. Lost in the Jungle, Paladin, summon 1 mana common, summon 2 1/1 Silverhand recruits. And you might think, yeah, okay, we used to have Muster for Battle, which was a 3 mana, 3 1/1s plus a weapon. That was kind of OP. How good is the flooding right now? You know, aggro Paladin is not really a thing. It has been at certain points throughout the history of Hearthstone, but not really right now. Think, well, why would we need this sort of thing? Well, there's a 4 mana Light Fuse Stegodon without this other card I would consider calling the Confused Stegodon. But because we have Battlecry adapt your Silverhand recruits, that's kind of interesting. If Paladin's able to get to some sort of mid-rangey control deck where you are relying on tapping and playing lots of 1/1s, this Light Fuse Stegodon is a very interesting 4 mana Quartermaster substitute. And Quartermaster was obviously super powerful and kind of meta defining for a little bit, with the mid-range Paladin being a little bit powerful, I would say, for a little bit of Hearthstone's history. So I think this has potential if we get a little bit more Silverhand recruit support or more Paladin support, which honestly Paladin just simply needs right now. Because otherwise Paladin's never going to be able to make it to this point to be able to do these cool, interesting things with Silverhand recruits. And the way they were able to do in the past was Shielded Minibot and Muster for Battle, which we just mentioned, which Lost in the Jungle is kind of a weaker version of that. But it also comes out 2 turns earlier. So there's still potential for Paladin, and I hope Paladin makes a comeback. 5 mana, Epic, Living Mana. For the Druids, transform your mana crystals into 2/2 minions. Recover the mana when they die. So, a little bit of an explanation about how this works. It's transforming your mana crystal. So on turn 5, you will get 5 2/2. So that's 5 mana for 10/10 power. Pretty strong. And let's say you cast this with 10 mana. You're only getting 7 because there's only space for 7 minions on the Hearthstone board. And then you're still keeping 3 of your mana. So you're going to pay 7. You'll get your 7 living mana, or however many empty spaces there are on the board once you've gone over the maximum, and you keep the rest of your mana crystals. Now, it seems like these mana crystals are not Death Rattle, give you back your mana crystals. It's just once they die, so there doesn't seem to be any sort of silence, potential silence tech to destroy these. This is kind of an interesting, the thing that comes to mind here is Doppelgangster, 5 mana, 6/6 worth of stats. But then you generally want to evolve this because this is Druid, obviously no evolve potential synergy. So this is kind of interesting, maybe in a token, kind of in an aggro druid. And the other thing that Blizzard has confirmed is that this does not work with Innervate. So you can't double Innervate this out on the first turn. You only get 1/2/2. So that, just as a warning, is highly not recommended. This doesn't work with Innervate or with coins. It's your actual mana crystals, not your temporary mana crystals. So it's interesting. I think it's fitting in a token aggro style of druid. Nothing else really. And we finally find the mage secret, being mana bind. Very cool. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, add a copy to your hand. That costs 0. Very, very cool. I think this is going to work reasonably well with the sort of tempo curving out elemental mage that I'm kind of predicting. I kind of started talking about that in part 1 of the video, part 1 of my review, and part 2. And I kind of think that this fits in with the ability for mage now to be able to draw some secrets on curve, play them on curve a little bit consistently, things like that. It's a cool secret. I think it, your opponent still, it's not counter spell, it's not spellbender. The spells still go off. But then guess what? You get a copy of it and you'll get to use it and for free. This is what makes it powerful. If you just gain a copy, not enough. But the fact that you gain it for free, so if your opponent's playing anything bigger than 3, which chances they are, it's really powerful. And if you're able to get this out for free with some sort of secret cheating, because there still are going to be some secret cheating mechanics for mage, very, very powerful. I like it. I think it could see some play. I don't know how powerful. We're almost there. I think this is 90 something cards out of the 130 we're going to get for Ngoro, because so pretty soon I'm going to be able to stop using the excuse of we haven't seen all the cards. But we still haven't seen all the cards at this point. So we're going to see. I think there's potential for mage to have this sort of deck. Now this is the priest card that I was talking about earlier. 3 mana, 2/3, obviously horrible stats here for priest, but it's battle cry, choose a friendly minion, summon a 1/1 copy. Now we've seen this sort of mechanic before with a couple within rogue and in priest before. But the reason why I like this is the fact that it's lower cost, so it's lower on the curve, and then it also has good synergy with the Death Rattle Priest quest. So Priest is going to be wanting to play a lot of Death Rattles now, and you're going to be able to gain an extra one. Now obviously hitting this on Sylvanas is obviously the dream, but Sylvanas is kind of leaving us from standard, so sadness there. But what we're going to be able to still do is target our other Death Rattles. Whether that's just simply a loot hoarder to try and draw a little bit faster to get more Death Rattles. Whatever the case is, generally getting extra Death Rattles is going to be extra power for you. So I kind of like this. Again, the poor stat line might hold it back. Maybe 3 mana, 3/3 is too powerful. But I think this has some really potentially interesting interactions that it could be having. And that's always one of the things I tend to look for. Aside from climbing on the ladder, I do want to be having fun and be playing interesting decks and hitting interesting combos. So this has a lot of potential for opening up a lot of cool combos. It's 3, so it can go in the late game. You'll be able to fit it in, double up this with a 7 or lower cost Death Rattle. Or in the early game, if your loot hoarder or something like that survives turn 2, bam, you now have 2 of them on the board. I like it. I like it a lot. I hope if the Death Rattle Priest survives, this card, I feel, is going to be a big part of it. Not of making that necessarily a good deck, but just of the fact that if the deck is good, this will be one of the cards in it that help it be good, if that makes sense. Molten Blade, 1 mana, 1/1 weapon. Each turn it transforms into a new weapon. This is the weapon version of Shifter Xeris. Shifter Xeris is the legendary, 1/1, 1 mana legendary that turns into a random minion every turn, which saw almost 0 play, and I opened it on my second pack, and so I was kind of sad. Well, I was happy because I thought it was cool. I'm like, hey, legendary, and then I tried to play it and it was horrible because there's such a large pool of minions, whereas Molten Blade, there's such a small pool of weapons. I think overall, again, we'll see if there's any weapons in the next 30, 40 cards that come out, but we can very quickly do the stats and just off the top of my head, I'm expecting this to be overall above average results. So I think this card might see play, but no promises right now. But I think it's interesting enough that I think it'll get run a little bit. And I'm afraid maybe in aggro decks, now that I'm thinking about it, just because they could potentially get a huge weapon right off the bat. Aggro warrior gets a true silver champion or something like that. Guess what? That's big problem, because they're healing and also clearing your board while their minions are continuing to punch you in the face every single turn. I think it has potential to be in there. We'll have to do the math to confirm the exact power level, expected power level, but we'll see. I think it has potential to be cool. I think it also has good potential to just get absolutely 0 play the same way Shifter Xeris did, though, for minions, for this mechanic for minions. Here we go. We made it. Hunter legendary quest. Play 7 1 mana minions. So Blizzard wants Hunter to go back to aggro, it looks like. And the reward is Queen Carnassa, who again I do not recognize from Ungoro, but that's again okay. Or still okay. 7/1 cost minions. Hunter already has a lot. There's a bunch of neutral ones that Hunter can play for to be aggro. Queen Carnassa, again, 5 mana reward, no surprise there. Shuffle 15 raptors into your deck. Huh, you're thinking, well, 5 mana, 8/8, that's good. A beast, that's good. 15 raptors, what are they gonna do? Well, Carnassa's Brood is Battlecry, draw a card. So you can, on your next turn, you draw one of these, and let's just be clear, this is 15 of these in your deck. You're probably not succeeding in playing 7 1-cost minions until turn 7 or 8, probably. Because you need to have some sort of draw to maintain, otherwise you're emptying your hand on turn 3 or 4, if all you put is 1 mana cards. 1 mana minions, not just cards, okay? This is minions, not cards. So you're gonna need to have a little bit of draw. You're still gonna put Savannah Highmane in your deck because you're Hunter. It's the best card in the game. Then you're gonna throw down the Queen Carnassa. Over half of your deck is now going to become these little raptors. So you're gonna play one, and then you're gonna draw another one, and then you'll play that one, and you'll draw another one, and then you'll play one, and then you'll finally miss a draw. And then the next turn, you'll draw another one. So this has potential to really flood the board. The only issue is that you're gonna have 15 of these in your deck. You're gonna be able to draw them and cycle through your deck very, very quickly, on average, statistically speaking. But the issue is that we're gonna see which secret is then going to be more consistent. This 7/1 cost minions, or the Warlock quest to discard a certain number of cards, because the Warlock quest reward is going to be 2 3/2s every single turn. So basically exactly what you're getting here, except here they're beasts. Warlock's getting demons, I believe. And that's just for free. Now it's almost negligible amount of mana, but it is more cycle as well through your deck. But it's going to be interesting to see if this is going to be more consistent or if the Warlock. This is kind of a very, very head-on-head race to see which one of these two quests becomes more consistent to allow that quest deck to be more powerful and consistent on ladder. This was the Raptor that you got from one of the earlier cards. I messed up the alphabetical order. Sorry. Another 1 mana beast, or 1 mana minion that Hunter is getting is the little Raptor hatchling. Super duper cute little guy. Death Rattle. Shuffle a 4/3 Raptor into your deck. Hey, it's also 1 mana. So now you're able to make your deck. You're probably going to need at least, let's say, 10 to 12. You're going to throw a couple of these guys in because they're adding now 13, 14 1 mana costed minions into your deck. So that's kind of cool, kind of interesting. A way to support this quest a little bit with new cards, which is interesting. And you can see the little guys in the card art here. He's just basically, you can see here the legs, the card art. They just zoomed in on the big guy's legs. And you can see him. I wonder if I can't zoom in right now here. Sorry. 2 mana beast. And now this is one of the cards that I think could become a little strong. This should be at least rare, if not epic. Crackling Razor Maw. You're filling your deck with 1 mana costed minions. You then have a 2 mana 3/2 beast, which we have. Bloodfen Raptor. Already have it. Then you're adding Adapt for free. Right? 2 mana 3/2 is already in game. Everyone has that card. If you play Hearthstone for 20 minutes, you have this card. You're now able to adapt a friendly beast, which if you're playing this legendary Hunter quest, you are going to be playing tons and tons of 1-drops. So you're going to likely have a 1-drop to hit with this adapt on that friendly beast, which will then let it trade up or Wind Fury or do all one of those 9 crazy things. So this, if the Hunter deck ends up being powerful, again, this is going to be one of those cards that's probably going to fit in very, very nicely to help enable that power. 4 mana 4/4 for Warlock. Ravenous Pterodax. I did that on purpose. It's Pterodax. Battlecry. Destroy a friendly minion. Adapt twice. That's a very interesting mechanic. So let's say you have some 1/1 token, some little weak imps or something out. You destroy one of them and you get a 4/4 to adapt twice. You can get extra attack, you can get stealth, you can get extra health, taunts, whatever the case may be. Wind Fury. Excuse me. And so that's, again, this is a very interesting mechanic. We haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of it, but very, very cool. Allowing you to get this adapt twice for destroying. This is something I think I saw early in Magic the Gathering when I played. You have to destroy your own minions to get some sort of buff. Very cool. Why not throw it in here? I love it. 5 mana 4/4. Oh, 5 mana 4/5, excuse me. Elemental, Servant of Kalamos. If you played an elemental last turn, discover an elemental. This is basically a more poorly statted Draconoid operative for elementals, and again, we need to know what all the elementals are. Right now, it seems like there's a pretty wide range of mana costs 1 through 9 for elementals, but we are gonna have to do the math to see what the statistics are for how many are higher statted, and if any of them are really just OP and broken. Like, how often are we gonna get that 7 mana Firelance Portal elemental, or the legendary from part 2 of our video, in our last video with Orzuk, I forget what his name is, the legendary. So it's going to be interesting. This, obviously, they couldn't just make another 5 mana 5/6. Draconoid operative is considered Draconoid OP for a reason. He's very, very strongly statted, and you get a Discover. And again, we're getting a Discover here. So this card, if elementals are a thing, this is probably going to be in there. It enables the, you know, if you did elemental last turn, so it continues that elemental train, and it gives you another elemental. So if you need a really small one for 2 turns, if you're like already planning your turns out, you can take a small elemental to enable in a turn or 2 from now. If you need a big one just because you need some more firepower, guess what? You can discover that. This card is great. I love the Discover mechanic. I've mentioned it basically every video. Giving players more choice is better. It makes them feel like your wins are more because of your decision making, and your losses are, you're able to review your losses and try and figure out where you went wrong and how you could improve in the future. Spike Ridge Steed. This is a Paladin buff card which helps enable their quest. Give a minion +2/+6, huge, and taunt. Again, working a little anti-aggro, but because it's 6 mana, it's just too slow to actually have an effect. By turn 6, I mean, if you haven't had a decent start against aggro, you need Reno or you're gonna die most of the times. Spike Ridge Steed, though, it has some potential, because there isn't too much in the way of silence, but there is still a little hard removal. But then the cool thing is, when it dies, you summon a Stegodon. Now, Stegodon is just a 2/6 taunt. So you're getting, when you look at this combined, you're getting 412 taunt of stats for 6 mana, which is a ton of stats. But the fact is, you need to put it on something. And this generally looks more anti-aggro than it does to beat control or mid-range decks. Maybe mid-range. Maybe you can work this into a mid-range Paladin. But we haven't seen enough early game support yet to make this super viable. I hope this can do work. I hope this does well for Paladin. I'm not sure that it will, but I don't know that I've seen like those strong 2/3 drops to really enable Paladin to get back into the game right now. And I know they're in the game, but you just into the high power rankings. We have a 3 mana 3/3 Battlecry, trigger a friendly minion's death rattle. We've seen this sort of mechanic before for Hunter, so they're also kind of pushing the death rattle move for Hunter. And there's no beast. If this was beast, I think it would kind of fit in a little easier for enabling some of that beast action. So it's good that it's not a beast. And it's kind of cool, triggering 1 friendly minion's death rattle. Cool, and it's at 3 mana, so again, like the same idea with that priest card that we talked about a couple minutes ago. It's 3 mana, so you can kind of fit it into the early game if you need to smooth out your curve and hit something else, hit an early card. Or you can fit it in late game and trigger, you hit this, you hit a Savannah Highmane with this card. You're going to feel great about it. There's no doubt about that. A 3 mana neutral 3/3 beast. If you played an elemental last turn, adapt. So now this is again working off of that if you elemental last turn mechanic. And now we get a 3/3 that gets to adapt. Which 3/3 for 3 is kind of slightly below what you want. You generally want 3/4 at least. But because you have that adapt, you have that choice of where those extra stats go. So this, in elemental decks, I think this is fringe for me right now because it kind of breaks up. Now I can't on curve play a 4 mana elemental that has the same wording. If you played an elemental last turn, do something. But I think it's going to be a kind of a fringe elemental card for the elemental decks right now. Kind of the same way Blackwing Technician kind of was in some dragon decks, because it wasn't a dragon. It didn't keep that dragon synergy going. Just like this is not keeping the elemental synergy going. And that's why I think this is going to be kind of a fringe, maybe a one of. You can hit it and not worry about it on curve because you have so many other elementals in your deck, but I'm thinking this is going to be kind of a one of. 5 mana rare Hunter 3/5 Battlecry. Draw 2 1-cost minions from your deck. Hey, guess what? You continue to thin out your Hunter quests by having Tol'vir Warden. Again, no beast mechanic, good. No elemental mechanic, oof, thank God. And this is really reasonable. It's not a great stat line. Obviously, 5 mana 3/5 is actually kind of a bad stat line, but it helps you thin out it draws 2 1-cost minions. And that's going to really, really help you for your Hunter quest. So I think this is reasonable. If the Hunter quest deck becomes viable and powerful and you'll probably want to, again, maybe run one of these. Running one of these I think should be reasonable. Probably not two, just because the stat line is weak. Like, I wouldn't want to have two of these. 5 mana 4/5, maybe this becomes too powerful. So the 3/5, maybe it ends up being reasonable to be in its fair. 8 mana neutral epic. Discover a spell and cast it with random targets. I don't know how I feel about this card. My first thought is this card is not going to be good. I don't know how this is going to be good. I'm sure Blizzard has ideas that I don't understand behind this. 8 mana is so much. 5/4 is very bad. I mean, if you're discovering Flame Strike or Blizzard, fine. But if you're discovering, I feel like there are so many ways for this to go wrong. And the fact that it says random target, so I guess you can't just pick Fireball and you always get the Fireball face or whatever the case is. But I'm just really confused as to how this card is going to be strong enough at 8 mana. Unless there's some sort of extra discover only from your class, or there's some other restrictions on it that we don't know about, or that I don't know about, at least at the making of this video. So I don't know how this card is going to be good or great. If you can think of anything, let me know. But I honestly, I really am not understanding or feeling this card right now. So we're moving on. A 5 mana 3/4 combo destroy a minion. Rogue has a 5 mana destroy minion. A 5 mana 3/4 that destroys a minion probably sees play in some sort of control rogue. This might help enable rogue to be more control oriented so that they can finish their quest. I think this helps enable the rogue quest more than I think at first glance I thought this card was no good. But now that I've thought about it a little bit, I think that this card could, let's be clear, I'm not taking a hard stance on this one, but I think this could help enable the rogue quest, because you're going to be able to just destroy an enemy minion on turn 5 or later, because you have all sorts of ways to activate even on 5. When you have counterfeit coin, you can play this on 4. And again, the stat line's bad, but guess what? You're destroying something on your opponent's side of the board. So it comes down as a 3/4. You've destroyed a 5 or a 6 mana or 7 or whatever you need to clear out the board to make space for you. And the last card of our review is a 7 mana 5/6 Battle Cry. Adapt, then adapt. So to me, this seems like we're not getting that duplicate adapt, where we will be able to pick duplicates here, or more specifically, get punished and be offered duplicates. So let's say you pick stealth, and then the next adapt you get cannot be targeted by spells. Well, guess what? That's kind of redundant because you already couldn't be targeted by spells. So this card again, it's a 7 mana neutral beast. I'm not sure that adapt then adapt. We're gonna really have to see. Here we're kind of costing adapt at 1 mana. Which I think there's been examples in this video of adapt not costing that much. So I'm really not sold on this card as, you know, in a vacuum on its own. So that's going to be it for me, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with me this long. If you made it this long, better hit that subscribe button. I'll be continuing to post my daily videos and finishing up the end of the review for Journey to Ungoro. Thanks for hanging out with me, everyone. Keep your stick on the ice.